All aboard the Spooky Express. Welcome once more as we take a trip towards Pennsylvania. We come across one of the most haunted prisons in America, Easter State Penitentiary. This building once held one of the most notorious criminals in history. The prison opened on October 25, 1829. It is considered by many as the first true penitentiary. Its revolutionary system of incarceration encouraged separate confinement as a form of rehabilitation. Inmates were punished with the individual treatment system, or most notably known as solitary confinement. Solitary confinement system eventually collapsed due to overcrowding, and by 1913 the prison operated as a congregated prison until its close in 1970. The prison was made to house 253 prisoners in solitary confinement. Most of the early prisoners were petty criminals and first-time offenders, and while at first the main goal of the prison was to not only punish, but to move the criminals into spiritual and self-reflection through solitude, it eventually did house some of the most dangerous criminals in history, and in reality, the guards and the counselors of the prison did have various physical and psychological treatment regimes. I say treatments, but in all reality, it was a lot like torture, to be honest. From chaining their tongues to their wrists that would cause the tongue to tear, to being strapped to a chair for days, to dunking prisoners in freezing cold waters during the winter, and the worst behaved prisoners were placed in the hole. The hole was an underground cell block where they would experience no sunlight, no human contact, and little to no food for 2 weeks. Nowadays, the penitentiary is a museum that is open year-round. Tours are held where visitors are allowed to walk into specialty cells. While most of the cells remain off limits due to decay from years of neglect, the prison is in a preserved ruined state. No major renovations or restorations have been made, and aside from the tour, the prison is home to a couple of art exhibits as well as an annual Halloween attraction. Scare actors aren't the only things haunted in this prison. Its 142-year history is filled with suicide, madness, disease, murder, and torture. Many troubled souls were left behind to roam around its abandoned halls. Most notable prisoners was Chicago gangster Al Capone. The mob boss was sentenced to a year at Eastern State. However, he only served about 8 to 9 months. And although some newspaper articles in 1929 describe Al Capone's cell to be the most luxurious room, equipped with the tasteful painting, desk lamps, and radios, new research does show that he did in fact have a cellmate, and it was pretty much on par with an average inmate. You can actually go and see Al Capone's cell for yourself, though. Rumor states that during his stay, Al Capone was haunted by the ghost of James Clark, one of the victims of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And if you're unfamiliar with the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, it was the result of a gang rivalry in Chicago. Al Capone led one side of it. His men gunned down the rival gang. So I think that him seeing the ghost of James Clark could have been a result of guilt and solitary confinement playing tricks on his mind. Even though executions were not conducted in the prison, it is home to its fair share of murders and deaths. At least 2 guards were murdered, followed by many inmates killed by disease or old age, and some fellow inmates killed by murder as well. According to many paranormal investigations, Cell Block 12 is one of the most haunted paranormal spots in the prison. Staff has reported a woman running up and down the halls, and since they do have Halloween events, the prison does hire scare actors. However, 2 cast members on separate occasions have witnessed a woman running up and down the halls, screaming and crying, and once they get close to the woman turns around and runs off again. Management believes this to be a banshee. Guard apparitions have been seen throughout the prison. There are incidents of staff as well as visitors who have witnessed the ghost of a guard who follows them around the prison and then disappears out of thin air. Noises in the halls as well as outside or near the prison have been recorded. In the early 90s, a staff member was opening cell block 4 when he says a force gripped him so tightly that he was unable to move. He also said he saw faces appear on the wall and that one form in particular called for him. It is a little hard to say if all that is true, but what we do know is that this place is creepy as hell. And if you ever want to have a paranormal experience, your imagination might just make sure that you get what you're looking for. But if in fact there are ghosts out there, you'd probably be able to find clues at Eastern State Penitentiary. Thank you for joining us on this trip. Till next time, goodbye.